Olympus no Tatakai gives me a few mysteries. Top of that list is, when was it released? Wikipedia has it at March 28th, but my Japanese reference books place it at March 31st. And naturally, nobody offers a citation on this one. Since I have encountered a lot of dating errors on Wikipedia, some from transposed numbers, some from copying incorrect sources, in the absence of any other information, I have to assume that the books are correct. The other question is, who is Wavejack Jr.? Every source I have lists Imagineer as the publisher of Olympus no Tatakai, but there's Wavejack Jr. on the box, and I can't find anything on them. Olympus no Tatakai was developed by Infinity, and it's the first game that we've seen by them. They seem to be a pretty small software house that focused on porting US computer games to the Japanese market, though in the mid-2000s they did create some original titles. The story of the game is that Orpheus lived in a village in Bronze Age Greece with his love, Helen of Troy. One day, Helen was bit by a poisonous snake and died, and Orpheus was grief-stricken. The goddess Aphrodite appeared to him and told him that he could recover Helen from the underworld. The game has a subtitle in Japan, Ai no Densetsu, or Legend of Love. It definitely relates back to the game's story, though I'm not sure how much the gameplay really has to do with love. The gameplay itself is the Famicom's favorite genre, side-scrolling action-adventure. You start out armed with just a club, and you set out from your home village, walking through a forest, and these blobs just drop on you. And here's where we run into the first problem with Olympus no Tatakai. There's a bad tendency to throw enemies at you that you can't hit. Although these are the first enemies you encounter, you can't crouch and strike them. You have to catch them when they jump, or catch them as they fall. Keep exploring and you'll find the first boss, and then the Temple of Zeus. Zeus is where we encounter another weird problem. To talk to gods and interact with a few other objects, you have to kneel before them and then hit A. Zeus doesn't do anything for you except let the other gods know that you're coming. So he has to be your first stop, but you don't really get anything for it. After that, it's off to Athens to meet Athena. She'll give you a shield. You had a shield before, but it didn't do anything. Now you can block ranged attacks. Except the way that ranged attacks come at you, it's really tough to block them. Especially with the boss that follows getting the shield. This Lamia's arrows go right over the shield and into your head. The best thing you can do is just run up close and swat at her. With the Snake Woman defeated, you'll rescue a kidnapped child, and that will get you a new club. It hits harder, assuming you remember to equip it like I failed to. I got it on eventually. Then after you defeat the next boss, you learn how to shoot fireballs from your club. And that's as far as I got. I reached a point in the game where I'd have to grind up currency, which is olives in this game. You lose half your olives whenever you die, and healing is extremely rare. You can refresh yourself at a fountain, which are only in a few spots, or you can recover a tiny sliver of health by having an enemy drop a laurel. The result of all of this is I would have to spend probably the next 30 minutes grinding in order to continue in the game. And I'm sure I would die a few times in that process. Enemies have a bad tendency to park right on top of you and just bleed your life away. You can't hit anybody who's on top of you, and the enemy will keep pace with you, and so there's very little you can do except try to get away. Olympus no Tatakai had a re-release eventually. It was ported to the Game Boy with a few changes to make it more difficult. Personally, I don't think they needed to make it any harder, but someone must have. Olympus no Tatakai strikes me as a perfectly fine game. It doesn't do anything wrong, it's just also nothing really special. It follows the structure of the action-adventure game exactly as we've seen it before, right down to the password continue system. If the genre wasn't so overcrowded on the Famicom, maybe it would stand out more. In Japan, it's barely remembered at all, basically only showing up in places that list Famicom games. For the eternal question of would I play it again, yeah I would. It's just, it wouldn't be my first, second, 3rd, 10th, 20th choice. It's an average game whose most notable feature is its unique setting. It might not be good enough to draw fans, but it's also not bad enough to draw hatred.